Hello and welcome to We the Students, a political discussion sponsored by Nauset Regional High School's AP U.S. Government and Politics program in collaboration with Nauset Video Production class. During the next 30 minutes, our panel, made up of 10th, 11th, and 12th grade Nauset students, will discuss the issue of immigration, and more specifically, whether or not the United States should build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. I am your guest host, Tyler Cremens, a senior here at Nauset and a veteran of the AP Government class. Just for the record, opinions expressed here belong to the panelists and are not the view of Nauset Regional High School or the Nauset Regional School District. Now let's meet today's panel. Starting on the left, we have Nina Jones, Christine Burns, Brian O'Sullivan, and on the right, we have Brian Nelson, Sean Chung, and Parker Mumford. So my first question for you guys today about this wall will be posed to the right side here. And it would be, what would a wall between the U.S. and Mexico actually look like? How would we pay for something like that? And how would it be manned and maintained? So anyone who would like to answer that first?
I can answer what we've decided, what we think the wall might look like. So a good example of a wall is the one that is in Israel in present day. It is 25 feet tall, made of concrete, and it has barbed wire at the very top. But there's also a wall in Saudi Arabia that's made out of fences that have motion sensors on them. And we were thinking sort of halfway between the two. You'd have the large concrete, nigh unscalable wall of Israel combined with the motion sensors of Saudi Arabia.
How effective is it?
Well, ISIS has recently declared war on Saudi Arabia, and this border along the northern Iraq border of Saudi Arabia and Iraq is meant to keep out these militant groups that are in Iraq and Syria right now, and there have been no invasions, so it is a resounding success.
May I respond to that?
Of course.
So that seems very economically infeasible, as in how are we going to pay to line the entire border with motion sensor cameras and barbed wire? Also, using Israel seems a bit inappropriate as a good example given the tumultuous conflict there between Israel and Palestine and Gaza.
Well, that's the reason why they need this wall, is because that's the reason why Israel built this wall, is because of the conflict. So, what you said about how we're going to pay for it, Sean, would you like to take this, or can I continue explaining?
I think I can take this.
All right.
So it would be a joint border security initiative from both U.S. and Mexico, because the issues of border security concern not only the U.S. but also Mexico.
I would also like to, if I could take this off on a little tangent, add some effects of illegal immigration would be leeching off the welfare system that some illegal immigrants have. So they're already costing us money as it is. So to prevent further payment for them by building a wall would, in the end, save us some cost in having to pay for welfare.
No, just hold on one second. You just asserted that illegal immigration has a lot of people coming in and leeching off the welfare system. Do you have any numbers or information that can back that up?
Yep, so I took notes dictated from an interview of Stephen Rota, Director of Research at the Center of Immigration and Illegal Immigration. And his center has gone before Congress and has done a lot of research on this. They estimate that about 25% of all immigrants in the country are illegal. And 51% of immigrant families altogether are on the welfare system.
Thank you for clarifying that. Earlier on, Sean, to your point about cooperation with Mexico.
Yes.
I just want to know, are there any current support from Mexico for a program like this? Has there been any cooperation in border security before that would lead us to work towards a wall?
Well, perhaps not specifically border security, but definitely issues that relate with border, well, not specifically a wall, but border security and security in Mexico, specifically efforts to combat the drug cartels that are rampant in Mexico. The U.S. has already run a program donating about $1.5 billion towards these efforts. So the U.S. and Mexico can and will cooperate on this.
I'd like to disagree on something.
I'd like to give
so-
the left a chance to respond.
Oh, thank you. So you said that the Mexican government hasn't said anything about efforts to build a wall, and that's actually false. They have explicitly said they won't be paying for it in response to presidential candidate Trump's statements that he will somehow make them pay for it. They have explicitly said that they will not.
Well, that's assuming they're paying the whole entire bill. It's not impossible that we could collaborate something that's more reasonable for a fair price.
We haven't heard a lot from these two
Yeah.
panelists right here. I'd like to hear something.
So I was going to speak to, you had mentioned the drug problems with the drug cartels. Shouldn't we address the United States as a whole and our problem? Because why would the drugs be coming across the border if not for the consumers, if not for the United States and their want of these drugs?
Okay, well, I'm going to answer that by saying that a wall isn't going to solve every problem, and no solution is going to solve every single problem out there, but it's going to help because it is known that the majority of cocaine and heroin and a large chunk of marijuana comes through the southwest border with Mexico, and putting a wall there would help cut down on this problem, but it will not eliminate it entirely.
If I can just put in some numbers, there have been predictions made that almost 700 tons of illegal drugs will be seized by the end of this calendar year. That's a ridiculous amount.
And that is out of a total of about 3,500 tons over the border.
If I can, earlier you said that the wall would be a mutual border security effort from Mexico and the U.S. A lot of the U.S.'s concern in terms of the wall angle of the plan seems to be keeping out illegal immigrants. This doesn't seem to be much of a problem for Mexico, so can you just speak for them a little bit here?
So I think we've already established that the cartel situation is rampant in Mexico and a threat to national security and stability there, correct?
Yes, but that's people leaving Mexico, not
Exactly,
coming
but
in.
they're coming in because the border is so porous. And that's how they get drugs into the country, and that's how they make about $10 billion a year. They have a lot of money, and they're a threat to Mexico. So if we cut off this trade and help to stop it, it'll decrease their influence and help Mexico overall.
Sean, hold on. Sean, I'd just like you to clarify for the viewer maybe how the wall would actually impact trade, because isn't there a lot of stories of how trade is coming around through seafaring routes and through tunnels, so how would the U.S. try and attack that with a wall?
So specifically, I guess, more patrols from the Coast Guard along the Florida coast, that seems to be a big issue, but the majority seems to be coming overland.
So if I may butt in, I found that there's sort of this weird idea among people when we say that it's right to build a wall, there's this strange conclusion that's jumped to that a wall is going to be the only thing that we do. And no, the wall is a starting point. And of course the wall isn't going to stop like overseas illegal activities such as immigration and smuggling, but and when I say overseas, I don't mean like between continents, I just mean from Mexico to the United States. But the wall is not going to be the only measure that we take. It's simply a starting point.
Going back to Sean's previous point, the sort of rhetoric about a porous wall, just letting all of these drug cartels in, how exactly does that work? Like, how is it going to be any better? Because the areas that we don't already have fenced and policed are very remote. They don't have the infrastructure for any real travel there in large quantities.
I would take issue with that. There are sections of the wall that are unwalled, and they're currently just slightly barbed wired in order to allow the flow of...
Do you mean like fences? Like,
Of fences, yes, not quite a wall, more of a fence. So that it's easy for people to slide right through there. There's also videos you can see on YouTube, people climbing over the wall in less than 20 seconds. So even areas that are fenced or improperly fenced and still easy to get through. I would also like to take up with what Christine said a while back ago about shouldn't we be focusing more at home about the problem with drugs? And that's what's been going on. The war on drugs is a thing, and it's, of course, hasn't succeeded. So to try to limit now the drugs that can get into the country would probably be the next step in
I would
helping with that.
suggest instead to look at the problems, look at what we're doing now and why they aren't working, rather than go right to the source and be like, oh, this is your fault, rather than I wouldn't suggest making problems with other countries. I would suggest definitely looking back at our own country, what we've done, why it hasn't worked, and address that and make new programs off of it.
So I
Such
think we're
as
getting a little
what?
bit off topic into a lot
Yeah.
of the drugs and illegal trade like that. But along Christine's point, I will say, what are some of the image problems that come with the U.S. as far as our foreign relations and how we deal with other countries that might come up from this wall, or if there's any?
I think the idea of building a wall would actually be a first step in ensuring more equality when it comes to immigration. I mean, think of all of the immigrants that come to this country. They've had to go through all this paperwork, this tedious process to get a visa into this country, and then have someone just walk over a border. And it's not fair to those people that come here legally.
And I want to add on to that, that if everyone wants to make the case that illegals are coming over because they want to be part of this country, why would that be the case? Why wouldn't they sign in the paperwork and become an actual citizen? Why would they not actually take the time to invest in being a part of America? It's because that's not the main goal. The main goal here is either influence from drugs, the cartels. They are not.
So I just want to press you a little
yeah.
bit more on this. You guys kind of danced around the actual question. I was wondering what it would do to the U.S.'s images and the global community as far as how it would affect foreign relations with other countries, not just the illegal immigrants coming
So
through.
before we get to that, can we speak on?
Yeah,
Of course.
because I think I personally and most everyone here would disagree with about everything you just said.
Well, then get on with it.
Respectfully. Well, so one of the major things he said was that most of the people coming through, or a large majority of the people coming through, are affiliated with drugs and crime. This is false.
Really?
The immigrants as a whole into the U.S. have a lower crime rate than U.S.-born people.
From what statistics?
Oh, I have them.
While he's looking for them, Christine, I know you had a point.
You were also. I was going to speak on to what Brian was
Okay.
saying, but
I have these.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it's from the American Immigration Council.
Can you read?
Oh, yes. So, a variety of different studies using different methodologies have found that immigrants are less likely than native-born to engage in either violent or nonviolent antisocial behaviors. That immigrants are less likely than the native-born to be repeat offenders among high-risk adolescents, and that immigrant youth who were students in the U.S. middle and high schools in the middle 1990s and are now young adults have among the lowest delinquency rates of all young people. This entire source actually has many different statistics and facts about this.
Now,
And
this is
can
saying
you say how
immigration,
this-
not illegal immigration.
Right, but you see, the main thing here is that undocumented immigration is included in these figures, and so if there was a spike in crime among undocumented immigrants, that would be evident in total
It would
immigration.
skew the data.
It would skew the data and make it higher than it is, where in reality it's low. So that sort of very explicitly conveys that their crime rate is not high. It's not as high as many people.
Or just that the amount of legal immigration is also increasing as the amount of illegal is increasing. So it's keeping it proportional.
Well, according to I don't want to make too big of a deal of this, but information from the Pew Research Center has actually suggested that the amount of illegal immigration or the amount of illegal immigrants living in the country has leveled off at around 11 million over the past couple of years. So just clarification on
So
that.
can
So
you-
actually, to your point, I think you just kind of fixed it a little bit. Why would we build a wall then if illegal immigration is
Exactly.
turning
Because
off?
right now, it's living off because the economy was weak a few years ago. Remember 2008, the financial meltdown? But it's getting better. And there's going to be more growth in this country, and that means more people are going to want to come over. So it's going to be a future problem.
Yes.
Earlier, a point we made was we should look to our problems at home with drugs, we should also look to problems in Mexico, because a lot of the people that are coming over to sell drugs or sell other things or to find work here even just, it's because they need to take care of their families. They're people just like us, but they're getting desperate and they need to take care of themselves. And I have an article that says a lot of people that come over the border do not see themselves as criminals. When they think criminals coming over the border, they think that's not us.
Furthermore, on that point, quickly to clarify, it's not just that they are themselves not thinking of themselves as criminals, it's that they are not, in fact, violent criminals. Many of them are not violent criminals. And actually, a large number of the people being deported or being hounded by immigration enforcement and everything, they are there for very minor crimes, for traffic violations, etc., not for murder, anything that we would generally think is a violent, awful crime.
But what you've got to remember is that every illegal immigrant, by definition, is a criminal, because they have immigrated illegally.
Okay, so along that, how would you say that the wall improves legal immigration? Because these people are gonna, if what you're saying is true, and especially to Sean's point that people are gonna be wanting to come here, how does that improve legal immigration? Or is there not new methods that people might try to get across the border?
It might not be specifically pertaining to the wall, but I would say in addition to trying to cut down on illegal immigration, I think it's important that we open up visas to more people, and that would also help lower the amount of illegals trying to come through.
Yes, because why would you come over the whole reason why these people are doing it illegally, coming over the border, YouTube videos of people getting over the fence so easily, is because the system in which we allow visas and other things is so complicated and it takes so much time and it's so difficult. Then what's the point of it? Why are you going to go through all of this?
So I see we kind of reach a consensus.
No.
I see we reach kind of a consensus onto why they're coming across. So I'm going to kind of shift this a little bit. How will this wall impact trade between the U.S. and Mexico and even Canada? I know a lot of you, I asked you to look at the North American Free Trade Association. For our viewers, that is a free trade agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S., and a lot of other North American countries based on production costs and stuff like that. So how would it impact our trade between Mexico and Canada? Yes, sure.
So I think a lot of the issues that arise with NAFTA and the wall are not actually because of the wall itself. It's because of statements from Trump saying that he's going to put tariffs on things that coming in and out of the country with Mexico, and that would be violating NAFTA, but specifically a wall would not.
And we've got to remember that we're not talking about Trump's wall. We're talking about a wall. We have a similar idea to Trump, but it's not Trump's wall that we're advocating.
Okay. Actually, I want to give you guys a chance to rebuttal.
Do you have anything to say?
Well, this isn't exactly on the topic of trade, but it is in international relations, and actually very quickly back to what you were asking before about how is this going to have America be viewed, which obviously will have a huge impact on trade with our neighboring countries and the global economy. So building a wall, first of all, it poses the question, why are we building a wall between U.S. and Mexico and not U.S. and Canada? And so that's a question that you mentioned you would ask later on. But why is that? What sort of an image of us does that give the rest of the world and our neighbors?
It's that we will be fighting crimes such as the cartels who are engaging in human smuggling, human trafficking, and drug trafficking. We're trying to fight that. There is not a huge, oh, sorry, I cut you off, but there is not a huge drug smuggling operation coming across the U.S.-Canada border compared to the U.S.-Mexico border.
I would also like to add that domestically we'll be sending an image. Considering of June 29th, 2015, Supreme Court ruled that potential voters do not have to show proof of citizenship. Allowing these things like this and allowing illegal immigration to continue as the amount it is would increase the amount of illegals able to vote, and which coming from Mexico, coming from South America, which skews the political balance very heavily. Figures from Pew Research Centers show that 66% of Hispanics lean left. Also, another thing, only 6% of the Mexican immigrants are educated. So having uneducated people that are already skewed to the left coming into the country and allowing that to continue in its entirety is completely unfair to rightists or independents or anybody who's actually trying to fight for a quality America when you have individuals who are uneducated, who don't know what's best for America, coming in and skewing the vote.
I think that's very much passing a personal judgment that that left ideology is wrong.
I
which-
never said it was wrong.
Well, you were saying people of more center and right ideologies
It's not fair for
are
them.
fighting for the equality. And so are you saying
Well,
that
no, I-
people that, like people on the left
This
aren't as
is-
educated on the
I
real
said-
issues?
I said people on the right, people who are independent, and anybody who wants. So I'm not excluding people on the left. I didn't mean to exclude people in it, but my main point is anybody who wants what's truly good for America would see people who are coming in uneducated and only wanting benefits for themselves coming into the country as is unfair for them, because you have states including California, you have that passed a new Motor Voter Act, which allows people to automatically register for voting when they're getting the license. Again, they don't have to show proof of residence or citizenship when applying for this. So this again gives this allows them to vote. Also, illegal immigrants are included in the census. So anybody along the border where there are high amounts of immigration, those states are going to have a bigger number in the electoral college compared to other states, which gives more northern states, more states away from the border, a harder chance to have representatives in the House of Representatives and in the electoral college. So the numbers, it's skewing the fairness in the political system in America.
So I'll give you a second to rebuttal. I just want to remind our viewers and anyone who's tuning in right now, you're watching We the Students, a public affairs political roundtable of AP government students at Nauset Regional High School. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to rebuttal to what Brian has just said.
Earlier the original question was about trade and how it would, I believe, affect our global image to have a wall between U.S. and Mexico. Do you think that perhaps the wall between the U.S. and Mexico could be interpreted by other countries as a prejudiced attitude toward Mexico, and that perhaps other countries might not want to trade with us as much?
Because of the fact that if we don't build one against Canada, what does that say about us with our prejudice against Mexico or Mexicans coming in? Yep.
Well, I would like to point to some outside examples outside the U.S. For example, let's say Ukraine. They're building a wall along the Russian border, and they're not going to build a wall along the entire border because they don't have a conflict with, say, Belarus. They're only going to build it where there's going to be an active conflict zone with Russia.
So I'd like to push you on that for a second. We're not in an active conflict with Mexico, so what makes you think that that comparison is...
I'm just saying it's an issue about how there's a problem on one side but not on the other, so we don't need to build a wall on the side without a wall.
In a way,
Well, in
we
the
are
same
conflict with
way.
Mexico.
Could this
Because
create a conflict?
We are in a conflict.
We
He's
are in
absolutely
conflict.
right.
The United States has declared a war on drugs, and lots of drugs are being smuggled through the porous border.
But are
So-
drugs not being smuggled in through other borders, like ports along the
As
sea
a
and
result,
ports
are we
in Canada as
calling
well?
more
More
on-
than
it-
half of the cocaine on our streets and large quantities of heroin, marijuana, and meth enter the United States along the southwest border. So we have the largest drug problems with this border. And once again, this is just a place to start. If it turns out that because there are drugs coming in everywhere, but it's just mostly Mexico, and Mexico is a starting point.
Well, the war on drugs is that's a whole mess on its own. It's a whole different issue. It is clearly interrelated, but that is largely, I believe, more of a domestic policy issue. We need to stop criminalizing minor drug charges, put more money into rehabilitation, these sorts of actions that the state can take, and that in itself will decrease. It'll decrease the drug problem,
And then we
like in
wouldn't need a
places
wall.
like Portugal. Then we wouldn't need a wall. The drug problem would sort
Expensive
of
wall.
go away without the expense, the militarization, the criminalization.
Well, there is a point where rehabilitation is not an effective method. If you look in Japan, among violent crime, Japan's old strategy, and still semi-relevant there, was to rehabilitate, and there was no serious punishment. And so people